The improbable has happened again for Penn State. On the road against Northwestern, this is Joseph Hyman, 17 yards, seals the game as the Wildcats beat the Nittany Lions 22-21. And that is now 3 straight losses for Penn State. Came into the season as a preseason number 2. They fall out of the top 25 after the loss to UCLA last week. You think they're going to bounce back? They don't. They lose by 1, 22-21 at home, and this is just another embarrassing defeat for James Franklin and Penn State. All right, back here in studio, Cardale Jones and Richard Johnson. Richard, we were sitting here last week, and the Big Ten game of the week took us to UCLA, and Penn State lost that game. And we had Rick Neuheisel's son out there, Jerry, calling plays. We got Northwestern now beating, and shouts to Northwestern for getting it done, going on the road to Penn State, beating Penn State. If you had told me this was going to happen today, I would have still told you no. I figured Penn State would bounce back. Your instant reaction is what?
I thought last week against UCLA was rock bottom. I was wrong.
This is it.
Penn State at home, 3-touchdown favorite. This is as disastrous as disasters can get. At the end of the game, Drew Aller goes out late with a lower leg injury as well. And then you lose to a Northwestern team that does not have its best player in running back Cam Porter, who was lost for the season earlier in the year. But Griffin Wilde, the South Dakota State transfer, comes in to this Northwestern team. 7 catches, 94 yards in this game, was massive for the Wildcats. They pull off an incredible upset in this game. This is rock bottom for Penn State and James Franklin. This is an unbelievable loss for them for the second week in a row.
Yeah, unbelievable to say the least. If you'd have told me we'd been through 3 weeks of Big Ten play and Penn State is 0-3 in the Big Ten, I'd have told you were nuts. But you look what Northwestern was able to do. Almost outrushed Penn State, outpassed them, outgained them in first downs, and dominated the time of possession by almost 10 minutes. This is embarrassing for Penn State, to say the least. And then if I'm Drew Aller, I know he went out late with a leg injury, but still, even up until that, he was not playing his best football, his football of the expectations we expect him to play at, as being one of the top quarterbacks, projected quarterbacks in this year's 2026 NFL draft. Penn State, I don't know. You start talking about the James Franklin experiment. Is it over? Right? Because this is unacceptable for a team of that caliber, with the guys they had returning. It was so much playing experience with the addition of Jim Knowles on defense, to lose at home to a struggling Northwestern team without, like you said, Richard, without their best player.
Make it make sense. Look, they played Oregon tough. They went to double overtime.
I was there.
But you were there. That's why. That's exactly. You saw them in person, Richard. I'm sort of lost in terms of what went wrong for them, and it feels like Oregon broke Penn State.
Yeah, it's funny. I was actually texting with an Oregon assistant coach last week as they were losing to UCLA, and we were joking about that. And then, you mentioned is at the end for James Franklin. It's going to be right around 50 million big ones to get rid of James Franklin. So I think that may be a conversation that Penn State's not quite ready to have, but he's going to have to make major changes at the end of the season, maybe before the end of the season. Right now is James Franklin, because it can't ever be this for Penn State. This was a Penn State team that, you'll recall, you expected not just to make a run at the Big Ten, you expected them to be a top 4 seed in the college football playoff, and they were one of my favorites to be playing for the national championship. You consider all that they did in the offseason. You bring in Jim Knowles as defensive coordinator. You redo that entire wide receiver room to help Drew Aller out. Drew Aller is another year into the offensive system with Andy Kotelnicki. You probably have a better offensive line than you did last year for Penn State. The running back tandem is back and great. Everything, all the pieces were there for Penn State to make a very deep run in the college football playoff. I mean, they might not be a top 5 team in the Big Ten.
Yeah, and it was funny, Richard. I'm glad I'm not the only one was on that Penn State high expectation train. I actually had them winning and coming out the Big Ten and representing one of those top 4 seeds with them. But it's been brutal, and I said this after the Oregon loss. That type of loss, double overtime, and the way they lost has an emotional strain on you that lingers. And I compared it to when Boston College went into Tallahassee last year and beat Florida State. And ever since then, Florida State is still searching for a win in conference. Did I think this would happen 2 weeks in a row? expectations going across the country versus UCLA. I said it'd be a dogfight. Did not think UCLA would beat Penn State. But 2 weeks in a row, now those self-doubts, those questions are going to start to seep in, not into the coaching staff, but within those players as well, because this shouldn't have been a game you should have played.
Richard, take me into the conversation then, right? Like, you have a $50 million buyout, right? And you just paid Jim Knowles nearly $10 million per season. What's the conversation within the facility now when you know that there's pressure to get rid of him to sort of start anew, but you're halfway through the season? Like, what are those conversations like in those facilities?
They have to find an answer on offense, and we don't know how serious that injury with Drew Aller is going to be, but it may be you have to find answers with Ethan Grunkenmeyer at quarterback, not Drew Aller. Again, we will see how serious that injury is with Penn State, but it's the offensive side of the ball that has been consistently letting this Penn State team down. They may have to make a change on that side of the ball, maybe before the end of the season.
Penn State has now lost 3 in a row. They were preseason number 2, and they're now 3-3, and they have officially been eliminated from the college football playoff after this loss.